We're briefing a little bit earlier today, but we have quite a bit of good news. But I want to start by reinforcing our messages on COVID vaccine. It is going very well right now, and this is the time to call. 313-230-0505. On average, you will spend 15 minutes on the telephone, and you'll have an appointment within 15 days. I don't know of any place else in the country where that is happening. I spoke this morning to my 83-year-old mother in Florida. Say, you got your appointment yet? She and two of my siblings are dialing the telephone nonstop to the Florida telephone number, and after 2 weeks, they've been unable to get through. She's debating whether to be one of those seniors in Florida who sits out overnight in a chair. That's the situation in much of the country. Here in the city of Detroit, you can dial the telephone and get a response. There's an advantage of having a city leadership that ran hospitals. It's the advantage of being in a city where Dan Gilbert can set up a huge appointment phone center. It's the advantage of being in Detroit that was the birthplace of the assembly line, and we just know in our blood how to run these things efficiently. I talked to Jeff Zients, President-elect Biden's head earlier this week, who wanted to know all about how we were doing it. I was really pleased to see President-elect Biden talk about basically taking the Detroit model, the mass vaccination centers, and the good news is, as he's indicated, he's going to pay for them, which is good news for us. We did not wait to find out if there was going to be reimbursement funding. We spent a lot of money with the TCF center rent, with all of the medical staff, with the call center, the supplies, and everything else. With the announcement by the President-elect, it's good to know that we will get reimbursed. But as far as I was concerned, the safety of Detroiters was such Detroit was going to move first, make sure our residents were safe, and we deal with the money later. So, 5 categories right now that you can dial the telephone, and at least as of a half hour ago, it was about a 10-minute wait. If you are 70 or older and you live in the city, you've got a good neighbor who's 65 or older who drives you. Your good neighbor can be anywhere. If you live in Detroit and your 68-year-old sister lives in Southfield, if she's driving you, she can get a shot too. So get the good neighbor who's in your life to take you. K-12 school teachers and employees and child care workers. I want to say this to the school teachers in the city. You need to think through the timing on this, and DPSCD is going to be running their own operation, but if you don't want to wait, we can take you. The governor has indicated she intends to have schools reopen March 1st. Want you to think about the timing of this. We are using Pfizer vaccines. If you get your first shot next week, you get your second shot 21 days later, which is mid-February. About 10 or 12 days after your second shot, you're at 95% protection if you're exposed to somebody with COVID, and if you do get it, it's likely to be a very mild case. That will take you to late February. So if you're going to be going into a classroom, and it's not just DPS, the charter schools as well, if you live or work in Detroit, if you're thinking, I'm going to be back in a classroom with the school children in March, if you call now and get in the pipeline, you will be effectively protected by the time those schools reopen. And we have seen a number of school outbreaks. The school outbreaks have not been among the kids. We all know this. There's something about the children's immune system that if they get it, it's extremely mild. But there's a lot of indication that children without symptoms can spread it. And so teachers' concerns about being in the classroom have been legitimate. There is no reason you need to be at risk. So call the number, get your appointment, and we will get you vaccinated in a way that you can go back into the classroom March 1st, or if you're in the classroom today, you should want to be protected at the earliest possible date. I've been hearing from our post office employees. I think that message got out. We deeply admire the work that the men and the women of the post office have been doing in this time, and they deserve to be prioritized, and of course, our own employees who have to be on the job site. I would encourage you, if you're in these categories, you say, I'll wait 3 or 4 weeks. I'd really encourage you to call today. This is your special window period because you are the most vulnerable to the virus. If the way things are going, I am hoping, assuming the vaccines show up on Monday as we expect them to, I'm hoping next week, we're going to lower this to 65-year-olds and bring in other essential employee groups. And I've been hearing from them. I've gotten phone calls from clergy who say, while we're doing our services online, we are tending to members of our congregation face-to-face. I have heard from folks in the funeral home business who have lots of face-to-face interaction. I've heard from some healthcare workers who are not affiliated with hospitals and can't get vaccines. I've heard from people driving cabs and Ubers and Lyfts with face-to-face interactions on a daily basis. We're going to evaluate these high-risk categories. And the way things are going, I expect us to expand eligibility next week. So I'm saying to those of you in these 5 categories, call today and get in line first. And I want you to think about one more thing. I don't know how any way to be except just give you probably more information than you want. But here's what you need to think about. It's going to be tougher and tougher to get that first vaccine going forward. We vaccinated basically 2,000 people this week. The week of February 1st, they're coming back for their second shot. They're already scheduled. So if you go to call for an appointment the week of February 1st, the first 2,000 shots are already booked with the folks who got their first one before. If you call for the week of February 8th, the first 4,000 shots are going to be booked by people getting second shots. That means as we go along, it's going to get harder and harder to get that first shot. And that's why I am saying to our most vulnerable folks, we created this exclusive window for you early to protect you. And I'd encourage you, talk to your friends and relatives around the country and ask them what they're experiencing. We've all had the other side, right? You remember the days you'd get those phone calls from employees who felt bad for you. Your city's in bankruptcy. I feel so terrible. Your city doesn't have streetlights. I feel so terrible. Think about how defensive that you felt when you got those phone calls defending our city. But once you book your appointment, call your friends and relatives in other places and say, I'm in the city of Detroit. I got on the phone. I got my appointment in 15 minutes, and I'm scheduled in a week or so. How's it going? Detroit is a national leader in COVID response, and this is an opportunity for us to be proud of that around the country. And I've just been really pleased with the job Hakeem Barry and the team have done. 400 on Wednesday, 600 yesterday without an issue, 800 today. We are ramping up, and it is going very, very smoothly. And if you've seen the stories on TV, people are having a very positive experience. But in this city, we have enough things going on. We can't ever afford to do just one thing at a time. And on last November, voted as a city by an overwhelming margin passed Proposal N. It was an extraordinary vote of confidence in me and in the city council members who backed this proposal. It ran against some of the commentary that was out there, and I think more and more we're learning. 5 council people voted to put this on the ballot. 71% of Detroiters were in favor of it. And it just shows you that there is a small minority of people who are extremely vocal on social media and otherwise that sometimes as an elected official you got to step back and say, I'm going to represent the majority of people of the city, not the ones who are causing me the most complaints. And that's what happened here. There were stories, as far as I was concerned, were completely false, that in the past bidding, the city of Detroit didn't want to help Detroit contractors. The people who wrote those stories knew full well that under the old federal program, federal law prohibited us from giving any preference to Detroiters. Under federal law, you can't do it. And so there were stories written that says Detroit companies weren't getting a lot of the work, like it was our fault, and the people who wrote it knew full well we were following federal law, and of course, had we violated federal law, they'd have written stories about how we did that. But I stood up during the campaign, and in the mailings that you got, we made a commitment that this is city money. It's going to be run under city ordinance, under city council oversight, and we can use city preferences. I promised you that more than 51% of the contracts awarded under Proposal N would go to Detroit companies. And we are here today to announce the awarding of the first $30 million in contracts. They were bid competitively and won by 7 companies. And I'm proud to say that all 7 of those companies are small companies located in the city of Detroit. 100% of the first bids are going to Detroit companies. And as a condition of the bids, these companies have to show you what staff are going to work on the jobs. In every one of these 7 companies, more than 51% of the workers who will be doing the work are residents of the city of Detroit. This is the Proposal N that we envision, removing blight from the city of Detroit with Detroit companies employing Detroiters. And next week, we will be out to bid with the first 300 rehab contracts, starting with the companies that will clean them out so we can start to secure those houses. Because as we promised you, we are going to combine demolition with rehabilitation. The team that did this, Boise Jackson, our procurement director, LaJuan Counts, the head of the Detroit Demolition Department. As we've talked about, this is no longer at the Land Bank. The Land Bank is out of the demolition business. This is the City of Detroit Demolition Department, the City of Detroit Procurement Department, and Detroit City Council oversight. And I have to say, I was optimistic we would do well. I wasn't sure we were going to get 100% success. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the man who ran the bidding process, our procurement director, Boise Jackson.
Good morning. I'm very happy that we had the amount of support in the bids on Proposal N, as the mayor said. We received 180 plus bids, which showed a lot of the enthusiasm and the support and the commitment and involvement level that the companies had. As the mayor said, 100% of these contractors are certified in Detroit. We took time out of this process, and the first release was 1,380 properties, 23 groups of 60 properties. The small companies spent a lot of time in the outreaches and in the communications meetings with us, asking a lot of questions, as did others. We even had companies submitting bids that were from outside the city of Detroit. But above all, there were 7 companies, and again, all of them are based in Detroit, hiring Detroiters, and above all, I want to also announce that we also have an Afro-American female-owned company that is one of the 7 companies in Detroit that is doing business as well. So we're very pleased. All these companies have procured and made commitments on the necessary equipment, and as well, we have vetted their individuals. So I'm very elated. Our next release we will have within the month, because we'll be doing releases of the similar size every quarter. So the companies that did not get bids in this first round will get an opportunity every quarter to submit their bids if they got the adequate number of crews and they got the adequate equipment in place. But we're even encouraged with them, because even they, have committed to hiring Detroiters and doing business and things in the city of Detroit. So we're very excited about this, and we're looking forward to getting these contracts started at the end of the month. Our submissions are going to City Council next week, and we're looking for approval of the contracts at the end of the month. So again, we're very, very optimistic and very confident that these companies can do the job, and above all, looking forward to the finalization of the contracts with these companies. Thank you.
And so we were very pleased that of the 7 companies that were selected, that were the low bidders, 5 are black-owned and 1 is a female black-owned company, as Mr. Jackson just indicated. The champions, 2 of the great champions for this program from day one, in fact, 2 people who actually wanted us to start a year earlier and be on the ballot earlier, are with us today. They had the faith that we were going to deliver what we promised, and I want you to have a chance to hear from them, Council members Scott Benson and Gabe Leland. I'll start with Councilman Benson.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and today is a great day. Number one, this is a promise kept. And so 2 years ago, we started the conversation about funding our own demolition. We cannot wait for the federal government to be the savior for Detroit all the time. We can do this ourselves, and we're proving this now. And so we talked about having Detroit-based companies, black-owned companies, our own residents doing this work, and this is where we are today. And so the letting of these contracts is proof that we can do this ourselves, and it's also proof that when we do something that's prioritized for Detroiters, that we can be the great beneficiaries. We talked about this is a process and program that is FUBU. This is for us and by us. And this is the results that we get. And so in my office on the northeast side of Detroit, which is heavily impacted by blight and did not see its fair share of federal dollars in investment, we're seeing our fair share now. The #1 call that I get in my office is for the demolition of homes in our neighborhoods. And now we're going to be able to get those homes down when they weren't being allowed under the federal grants and the federal dollars. This is fantastic. I'm really excited to be here today and to talk about this and then go back into my community and to say that the question and the faith that I asked you to put in me about this program and Prop N, we're delivering it now. Another promise kept, and this just shows how residency in Detroit has its privileges. And then I know my good friend to the west, Member Leland, who is also an advocate on this, is also going to talk about this today.
Thank you, Member Benson, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Truly, this is a great day today. You know, residents have come to me over the last many years saying, Councilman, you know, what are you going to do about blight in our community, you know, and in District 7? And today, this is one more step forward to getting into our communities, you know, raising open and vacant structures that have been plaguing these neighborhoods for, you know, 10, 20, and 30 years. But there's also a rehab component to this proposal as well. And so with that, we have Detroit-based companies that have provided quality work and will continue to do so. We have a quality workforce here in the city of Detroit. And this is, I think about, you know, this week we're rolling out our vaccine, and we're also allowing for contracts for demolition in the city of Detroit. This is truly a great day and a great week for the city of Detroit. You know, I think about, you know, individuals in the city, especially as we prepare for Monday and MLK Day. I think about leaders like Coleman Alexander Young, who, you know, stood strong for diversification and you know, bringing, you know, black contractors into the city, providing opportunities for employment. And we're sitting on the shoulders of giants. You know, he led the way, and we are continuing that legacy. And as we prepare for MLK Day on Monday, you know, these are the types of individuals that I'm thinking of about how we continue to move the city forward. And just what a great opportunity to, you know, put food on the table for our city residents. Those that work for these companies, they are quality employees, and, you know, between that and raising properties, you know, throughout the city of Detroit, and to continuing that process is something that I'm very grateful to be a part of. And so thank you, Mr. Mayor. But truly we are here today because voters of the city of Detroit resoundingly supported Proposal N. And now we are providing opportunities for Detroit residents to get some of this work. And it's just a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Leland and Benson. Of course, they're being asked the same question I'm being asked by neighbors every day. When am I going to start to see demolitions? And so these contracts will be sent to Council on Thursday. If my colleagues here can get them passed before the end of the month, we will be doing the asbestos abatement in February, and you will see demolitions start this spring. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the woman who is running this program now, the head of the Detroit Demolition Department, LaJuan Counts.
Good afternoon. We wanted to provide you with the list of companies that were selected for the contracts to be presented to Council and the percentage of Detroiters that they have working on the Detroit work. So we have Detroit Next with 63% of Detroiters performing demolition work, Inner City Contracting with 56%, Juniors with 70%, Moss Company with 82%, RDC Construction with 100%, Rickman Enterprises with 80%, and SC Environmental with 65%.
So those are the 7 winners. The details on the announcements are going out right now. And Boise, you said you had how many bids total?
We had 180 bids.
180 bids. Those were the 7 winners. They did a great job, and it's good to see the small Detroit companies be the ones who are succeeding. And it's what Ms. Counts has done is do a capacity test so that you can't bid on more work than you can do. You had to show us how many crews you had, how much equipment you had, and who your employees were. And a number of these folks will be bidding again in 3 or 4 months, know that if they add some more equipment and some more staff, they can bid on more work in the next round. And I hope what you'll have then is small companies growing to medium companies, going to big companies, and I hope the bigger companies will get more competitive in their pricing, because frankly, the small companies just flat out underbid them on price. And that is an excellent thing to see the small operators get this chance to grow. So we're very pleased at what happened today, and with that, we'll take any questions.
Mayor, we have a few questions from Annalise Frank from Cranes Detroit Business. First one's on the COVID vaccinations. She wanted to know if the city is looking at providing transportation for individuals like they did for testing at the state.
Yeah, we're
fairgrounds.
working on that right now, and I think next week we'll end up with a similar arrangement as we did on the test site with people who will provide free transportation to those who otherwise can't get there. I wanted to first incentivize the Good Neighbor program, and that's been enormously successful. I think we had 400 or 500 good neighbors who have been vaccinated by driving folks who are 70 or 75 plus. But very shortly, I would say before the end of next week, we will have free transportation for seniors arranged.
Okay. She also wants to know if we know of the 7 contractors that were selected, how many of them are Detroit headquartered versus Detroit based?
Okay. We have a man here who knows the answer to that.
Yeah, thank you. Detroit Next is Detroit headquartered. Inner City Contracting is Detroit headquartered. Juniors is Detroit headquartered. Moss Company is Detroit headquartered. RDC Construction is Detroit headquartered. Rickman Enterprise is Detroit headquartered. And SC Environmental is Detroit headquartered. So 100% of them are Detroit headquartered business.
7 out of 7. It's amazing.
All right. Another question on that, has there ever been in the city's demolition program a bid package this large that has gone to all Detroit-based companies, Detroit headquartered companies?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, we don't have the records from 15 or 20 years ago, but certainly not since we've been around. But what happened here is just absolutely fascinating. What Lawan Counts and Boise Jackson did was sit down with a lot of the small companies and said, what are your barriers to getting in? One of the things is small companies need to be paid on a timely basis. They don't have the cash to carry their employees' paychecks for months. They came up with a prompt payment process so that they could bid. We had bonding requirements that were far in excess of what that was needed. We got it down to a reasonable standard. And so what they did was, again, we're freed from these federal regulations. I could go to Washington, D.C. and talk to Treasury officials, and you couldn't have these conversations about prompt payment needs for your local companies. But now, because we're doing it locally, they eliminated those barriers. And frankly, some of those companies I hadn't heard of before, although Ms. Counts tells me they've been doing a good job for us in small numbers. Now they're going to get a chance to grow. I mean, and Councilman Benson, you've been an advocate for changing these restrictions for a while.
Another question on the bonds from Annalise Frank. She wanted to know what the timeline is for issuing the bonds and what the dollar amount of the first part will be to be issued.
Should be able to do this from memory. Is it 178? You know what? We have to get you those numbers. Okay. But we're issuing the first chunk in February. And we just did the presentations to the rating agencies in the last week. But we can get you that. John Naglick and the CFO's office has all those details.
Okay. With demolition work and the rehab work going to be expanding in the city significantly, is the city doing anything to make sure that more Detroiters are prepared for these jobs in both the rehab and the demolition side?
Right. So Nicole Sherrard Freeman and Detroit at Work is running an entire training program. I was really pleased that City Council recently approved an agreement for Brian McKinney to set up a training center on Livernois that will be an additional site. But between the private sector and Detroit at Work, we're going to be running strong training programs. We are not going to be able to get low bid prices as we go forward if we don't train more and more folks to be able to do this work. So training is a big piece of it, and if you are interested in getting into this business, these jobs all start at $15 an hour in benefits and work up from there. They will start you out doing things like holding the hose or spreading the seed at the end, but you can end up working your way up to equipment operators who can make $30 plus an hour. So there's an entry-level point, and then there's more skills and higher pay. So go to DetroitAtWork.com.
Okay. And for the
Maybe
council members,
DetroitAtWork.org.
for the council members, if you could talk for a minute about a little bit more at a personal level in terms of your experience with blight in your districts and what your residents, your constituents have had to deal with and what this bond program means.
So when I first got elected back in 2014, a lot of these structures were open to trespass. And so that was sort of really the first stage of how do we secure these structures. And so that happened. And while the residents were joyous about that, we knew that the ones that needed to come down, the emergency demolitions, needed to be raised. But we also knew that there were significant houses that could be rehabbed. And so this, the dollars here that we were able to approve, and let me just say thank you to Detroit. We, the citizenry, resoundingly supported the ballot initiative to allow us to spend these dollars. Now we're going to be able to go through our neighborhoods and continue this process of raising dangerous structures that have been sometimes, sitting for, 20, 30 years. And we recognize that blight is an issue. And this is just another way that we can commit to our residents from the very beginning about, taking care of the blight. I had a resident come to me about 3 years ago over on Burlingame who said, that their granddaughter was murdered in one of these structures, and the body was dumped inside of the property. It brought tears to my eyes, and I've been working with that resident for some time. And there are challenges to getting these properties down, but as we continue our pursuit to eradicating blight and raising these properties, these are the kinds of individuals that I can go back to and say, we did it, and we did it because of you and your support for the bond proposal. So thank you for having the trust in us. And now it's our turn to return the favor.
Right. And I can't say it enough times. The number one call that comes into my office is about blight. And we are now going to start to solve these issues. I can't tell you how many times I've had to tell somebody, I'll work on it, I will talk to demolition, I will talk to B-Seed. In the end, with no funding, there is no demolition. We now have the ability to fund the demolition within our city and make a huge impact. And I'm not sure if this is a well-known stat, but over half of all the rapes that occur within blighted and abandoned structures occur with minors. Can you imagine that? Young girls and boys are drugged into these homes and raped. And so we are now going to get rid of one of the main causes of some of our worst fears for our youth as they walk past these buildings on the way to school. When we talk about safe routes to schools, we're going to be talking about demolition. When we talk about changing the environment in which our residents and our neighborhoods live, demolition is huge. We've gotten used to living in chaos. We don't have to do that anymore. We are now taking back our neighborhoods and giving an environment in which we deserve and which we should have. And this is all part of Prop N, and so I'm so excited about that. I can now look the residents in the eye and say, hey, we have a funding source to bring these homes down, and we have a community board for demolition who's going to be giving feedback to this process and advocating for different areas and where homes should come down that maybe our eyes at the 30,000-foot level don't see. The people who are on the ground, the grassroots, will also now have a say in how we identify and prioritize homes coming down. So this is huge. Very, very excited about this.
All right, and for the folks listening online, there is a link on the front of the City of Detroit website now that will take you to the full list of 1,380 demolitions under this program.
So if you go to DetroitMI.gov, the 1,380 houses that will be coming down this year are listed. They're in alphabetical order. We don't have a map yet. We'll have that shortly. But they're in alphabetical order by street name. So if you want to know if one of the first 1,380 is the one on your block, you can go to that list and you can see the addresses of all the ones that are being sent to City Council.
Okay, and no more questions. Mayor, any final thoughts from you?
Nope. Everybody did a great job, and now we'll go back to work. Thank you.
All right, thank you.